For 30 years, I believed my life was simple, maybe even ordinary. Mornings at my little bakery in Dallas, afternoons helping my husband with the books, and evenings when our laughter filled the kitchen. We weren't perfect, but we were steady. That's what I thought. Until one evening I noticed something strange, a faint scent of perfume on his collar. Not mine. It started small, like a whisper I tried to ignore. The late nights, the locked phone, the careful lies disguised as tired smiles. I told myself it was stress, that I was imagining things, but deep down I knew something was cracking beneath the surface. The truth didn't come all at once. It arrived in fragments, a receipt tucked in his wallet, a text that wasn't meant for my eyes, and finally, a photograph that shattered everything I thought I knew. The woman in that picture wasn't a stranger. She was Sophia, the girl I raised like my own daughter. They thought I would break that. I would cry, quietly fade into the background, and let their secret rot in silence. But they forgot one thing: I built my life with my own hands, and I wasn't about to let them burn it down. So I stayed calm. I baked, I smiled, I waited while I planned the sweetest revenge a woman could ever serve the truth. This video is brought to you by Heartbreak. It's best enjoyed during lunch dinner before bedtime, or when you just need something playing in the background while you work study drive or do the dishes. Have a wonderful day. There are mornings when I wake up before dawn, before the city begins to breathe. Dallas still sleeps behind its curtain of mist, and the narrow street outside my bakery is wrapped in silence. I like those quiet hours. The oven is cold, the smell of yeast has not yet filled the air, and I can hear the faint hum of the refrigerator in the back room, the only heartbeat around me. I sit by the small wooden chair next to the counter, sip my black coffee, and plan the day ahead. Flan. Cinnamon rolls. Butter croissants, all waiting to be born from the same pair of hands that have kneaded, baked, and built this place for over 20 years. My bakery, Casa de Dulce, is more than a business. It's a story written in sugar and patience. The story of a woman who believed that love, like bread, rises best when given time and warmth. Jose, my husband, used to say I was the heart of Dallas. He said it with that smile that once made me believe in forever. We met when we were young, an engineer with dusty boots and kind eyes, a baker just starting out, covered in flour and hope. He came in one rainy afternoon asking for a birthday cake for a coworker. He stayed longer than he needed to, asking about frosting, then about my name. And finally, if I liked football. I didn't. But I said yes anyway. That's how it began, with a small lie told out of curiosity. Not deceit. Now, 20 years later, we have 2 children. Alex, 22, finishing college in Austin, and Sophia, 19, working part-time at a coffee shop nearby. On weekends, when they both come home, the kitchen becomes a storm of laughter, music, and the smell of sugar melting into caramel. I love those moments, the noise, the warmth, the illusion that life is still simple and safe. But peace, I've learned, can be a very thin layer, easy to shatter. That Tuesday morning, Jose left the house earlier than usual. He said he had a meeting at the new construction site. I nodded, half listening as I wiped the counter. For years, his schedule had been unpredictable: early mornings, late nights, business trips that appeared out of nowhere. I was used to it. Or maybe I just stopped asking. Later that morning, I was in the office behind the bakery, printing invoices, when I heard the ping of a new email. It was from our shared account, the one we used for household expenses. A receipt from a luxury store, men's cologne and hair gel, $198, c'est. I frowned. Jose never cared for such things. He was the kind of man who thought soap was enough. At first, I told myself not to overthink it. Maybe it was a gift for someone at work. Maybe the company was running some promotion. I closed the email, but the thought lingered, like a splinter under the skin. Around noon, Sophia stopped by to help me restock the shelves. She smelled of coffee beans and youth that bright, restless scent that only belongs to 19-year-olds. "Mom, is Dad coming home for dinner tonight?" she asked as she tied her apron. "I don't think so," I replied. "He said he has another long day ahead." Sophia paused, tilting her head. "He's been really busy lately, but he smells different now. Like, really nice." "Did he buy new cologne? Smells fancy, the kind you see in those Paris commercials." Her words were casual, but they hit me like a gust of wind. When she left, I stood by the door for a long time, staring at the sunlit street. Cologne. A man who once sneezed at the mention of perfume now smells like Paris. I shook my head. "You're being paranoid. I told myself. People change. Men change. That evening, when Jose came home, I watched him closely. He looked tired, hair slightly dishevelled. Tea loose, smile ready. "How was the bakery today?" he asked, kissing my cheek. "Busy? You?" He nodded, walked into the kitchen, and as he reached for a glass of water, I saw it a faint, smudged mark on his collar, not grease, not dust. A soft reddish stain, lipstick. For a moment, my breath stopped. He didn't notice or pretended not to. I turned back to the stove, my voice steady. "Dinner's ready," he smiled, sat down, and talked about work, about concrete, deadlines, and blueprints. I listened without hearing a word. That night, I didn't ask. I couldn't. We ate in silence, the clink of silverware filling the spaces between us. Afterward, he went to bed early, exhausted. I stayed behind, washing dishes that were already clean. When I finally lay down beside him, his breathing was slow and steady. Mine wasn't. I reached for my phone, scrolling through our shared calendar. For years, Jose had updated it religiously: meetings, projects, lunch breaks. But this month, blank, empty squares. It was a small thing, but to me it felt like standing at the edge of a cliff and realising the ground beneath you isn't solid anymore. The next morning, I arrived at the bakery before sunrise. The air smelled of flour and doubt. I threw myself into work kneading dough, mixing sugar, pretending that if I stayed busy enough, the noise inside my head would quiet down. It didn't. By afternoon, the shop had calmed. Jose's phone buzzed on the counter. He'd left it there after picking up his jacket. I froze. My first thought was to ignore it. My second was to breathe, but curiosity is cruel. A message flashed on the screen. Friday. Same place. Can't wait. Miss you. No name. Just a number I didn't recognise. I stared at the words, my chest hollow. For a moment, I imagined replying, demanding an explanation, but instead I placed the phone back where he'd left it. Screen down. That evening, he returned to pick it up. "You saved me," he said with a laugh. "I would have gone crazy without this thing." I smiled faintly. Don't we all? He didn't notice the tremor in my voice. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat in the backyard. The sky over Dallas glowed orange. Fading into dark, somewhere down the street, a dog barked. The air was warm, but my hands felt cold. I thought about our first years together, the small apartment in San Diego, the nights we fell asleep on the couch after too much wine, the morning he painted the bakery sign himself because we couldn't afford a professional. When had all that become a memory instead of a life? My mother used to say, "When a woman feels something is wrong, it usually is." I didn't want to believe her, but her words echoed in my mind, sharp and certain. Jose came out for a moment, waved, and went back inside. He didn't ask why I was sitting alone. Maybe he didn't see the glass trembling in my hand. The next day, while checking receipts in the office, I found something I shouldn't have: a hotel invoice mixed in with our bakery bills. Hotel Crown, Plano, Texas. 2 nights, room for 2, guest. Jose Alvarez. I read it 3 times, unable to breathe. Plano was almost an hour away. He had never mentioned any project there. I folded the paper carefully and locked it in the drawer, next to my notebook of recipes. For the first time in my marriage, I was keeping a secret from my husband. That night, he came home even later. I pretended to be asleep. He showered quietly, slipped into bed, and turned his back to me. In the faint glow from the window, I watched his silhouette, familiar, trusted, now unbearably distant. And somewhere inside me, a quiet click, like a door closing, like something breaking, softly, but beyond repair. I didn't cry. I didn't move. But I knew from that moment on, peace was gone. The smell was the first thing that didn't belong. Jose had always smelled like flour and coffee. He'd spent half his life around ovens, and the scent of baked dough seemed to cling to his skin no matter how many showers he took. But that night, when he kissed my cheek and murmured, "I'm home," there was something else, something sharp, expensive, and unfamiliar. Perfume, not mine. It lingered on his collar as he walked past me to the sink. His voice casual, his movements practiced. "Busy day," he said, rolling his shoulders. "Long orders for tomorrow. I stayed to prep." I smiled because that's what good wives do when they don't want to start fights before dinner. But as I turned back to the cutting board, slicing onions for the soup, my chest tightened like something inside me had suddenly gone off balance. The knife trembled in my hand. "Long day for me too," I said softly, trying to sound normal. One of the ovens broke again. I had to finish everything on the smaller one. Jose nodded but didn't look at me. He washed his hands too long, 30 seconds, maybe more, before drying them carefully on a towel. The The same towel I'd folded that morning. I caught a faint shimmer on his wrist when he lifted the towel. A trace of glitter. Gold. Later that night, after Alex went to bed and the house fell quiet, I found the receipt. It was in the pocket of his jeans, which he'd tossed carelessly over the chair, something he never did. Jose was meticulous with his clothes, so when I saw the jeans hanging there, I knew something was off. I told myself I wasn't snooping. I was just doing the laundry early. The paper was small, folded once, soft from being handled. I opened it under the dim light above the sink. Elysian Hotel, room service, 2 guests. My breath caught. The date was 3 days ago. And then the total $264. That's 2 glasses of wine, a steak, a dessert. No bakery meeting cost that much. My mind tried to explain it away. Maybe he met a supplier, maybe a client. But the part of me that had spent years watching him, knowing him, hearing the smallest changes in his tone, that part whispered the truth I didn't want to hear. It was beginning. The next day, I tried to test him. I packed his lunch early and slipped a small note inside. Something I hadn't done since we were first married. It said, "I love you. Come home early tonight." When he came home, the lunch bag was still in his car, untouched. He said he'd eaten out with the guys. Carlos and I had a quick bite at the taco stand. He said, I knew Carlos. Carlos hated tacos. That night I lay awake next to him, listening to the steady rhythm of his breathing. My eyes open in the dark. The ceiling looked different, somehow colder, farther away. I used to feel safe beside him, like the world was quiet and predictable. Now it felt like there was a secret between us, breathing softly in the space where love used to live. 2 days later, another clue found me. I was cleaning out the car, my way of thinking, when things felt too heavy and under the passenger seat. I found a small black pouch. It looked like one of those cosmetic samples you get from perfume counters. I picked it up, turned it over. Velour Nights. The smell hit me instantly, the same scent that had clung to his shirt that night. It was faint, but it was there. I sat in the car for a long time, holding that tiny pouch like it was evidence from a crime scene. The neighbourhood was quiet. Kids were playing somewhere down the street, their laughter echoing through the Texas air. Everything outside was normal. Inside, everything was falling apart in silence. I took a photo of the pouch with my phone, just in case. I didn't know why. Maybe I needed proof that I wasn't imagining things. The bakery became my refuge. When I needed dough, my hands stopped shaking. The rhythm, the press, the fold. The turn was grounding. I could lose myself in the process and pretend that nothing had changed. But even there, reminders of him were everywhere. Jose's handwriting on the order slips, his jokes with the staff, the way his name appeared next to mine on the sign above the door. La Dulce Vida, Maria and José. The name used to make me proud. Now it made my stomach twist. That afternoon, as I was cleaning the display case, I overheard 2 customers whispering near the counter. She's so nice, one of them said. You'd never guess her husband's the one who's always out late. The words froze me. I turned, forcing a smile. But they had already moved on to picking pastries. I felt the world tilt a little. When I got home that night, I didn't ask Jose where he'd been. I just watched the way he took his phone into the bathroom, the way he smiled at the screen before turning it off. When he fell asleep, I opened the laundry basket. Another receipt this time from a boutique, Soleil Boutique, the one near North Park Mall. I'd been there once, years ago, when we couldn't afford anything but window shopping. The receipt listed a silk camisole, size S. I haven't worn a size small since college. By then, the world inside me had split in 2. One half of me wanted to believe in him, the man who'd once danced with me in our tiny kitchen, who used to bring me coffee every morning, who cried when Alex was born. That man wouldn't hurt me. The other half whispered that love can't hide the truth forever. That half was louder. The next morning, I decided to follow him. I told him I had a supplier meeting downtown and asked when he'd be home. Late, he said. Too easily. We're doing inventory tonight. He left at 6. Finned. I waited until 6:30, then grabbed my keys and drove after him. It felt ridiculous, cinematic almost. I didn't even know what I'd do if I caught him lying. My heart pounded so hard I thought I'd faint. He turned off the highway toward Uptown, not the industrial area where our bakery's suppliers were. I followed at a distance. He parked near a small wine bar, Luna and Vine. From across the street, I watched him get out of the car, and then she appeared. Sofia, our assistant baker, the one who always stayed late, the one who called him chef with that playful tone. She touched his arm. They laughed. They walked inside together. I couldn't breathe. It wasn't a kiss. It wasn't anything I could prove. But the look in his eyes when he saw her, it was a look I hadn't seen in years. I sat in my car for nearly an hour, watching them through the window, the outline of their silhouettes against the warm light inside. I wanted to go in. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I just started the car and drove home. That night, I couldn't sleep. The perfume smell was everywhere in my hair, in the sheets, in the air itself. I stood by the kitchen window, watching the empty street, clutching my phone. The photo of the perfume pouch glowed faintly on the screen. My hands trembled. I deleted it. Then, almost immediately, I regretted it. Maybe I wasn't ready yet. Maybe I needed to see how deep the betrayal went before I could face it. I looked toward the darkened hallway where Alex's door was closed, his soft music playing inside. For his sake, I couldn't explode, not yet. So I told myself I'd wait. I'd gather every piece, every sign, until there was no more doubt. And when the truth stood complete, when it was undeniable, I'd decide who Maria Alvarez would become. Not the wife, not the fool. Someone else. Someone stronger. The morning after the wine bar, the world felt off-kilter. Even the sunlight looked wrong, too bright, too cruel, spilling across the kitchen tiles like nothing had happened. Jose's keys jingled on the counter, his usual rhythm. He hummed under his breath while pouring coffee. A tune I used to love. I stood across from him, pretending to check messages on my phone, pretending my chest wasn't burning. He kissed my forehead. Don't wait up tonight. Mi amor. I'll be late again. Inventory week. He didn't even flinch. Lies sounded smooth on his tongue now, like he'd rehearsed them. I smiled anyway. Of course, I said. And just like that, I let him go again. After he left, I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, staring at the little swirl of coffee in my mug. I thought about following him again. But what was the point? I'd seen enough to know. The problem wasn't proof. It was what to do with it. I opened my laptop and typed, Private Investigator, Dallas. Hundreds of results. Cheap ones. Professional ones. Discreet ones. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. The very idea of hiring someone felt absurd. Something people did in movies. Not real wives who baked bread at 6 a.m. and worried about gas bills. But I couldn't unsee that night. I couldn't unhear their laughter. So I clicked on a site that looked plain, simple. No glossy stock photos, just a name. Carlos Medina. Licensed investigator. Confidential. Former Dallas PD. Something about the description clean. No sales pitch made me trust it. I dialed the number. Medina Investigations. A calm male voice answered. Hi, my name's Maria. My voice cracked. I think I might need your help. A pause. Not judgment. Just patience. Is this about infidelity? The word hit like a physical thing. Yes, I whispered. He exhaled softly. All right. Why don't we meet somewhere private? There's a cafe off Greenville Avenue. Quiet on weekdays. 2:00. I agreed before I could talk myself out of it. I arrived early, because waiting alone felt safer than being late. The cafe was nearly empty, just a couple of students with laptops, and an older man reading the paper. I sat by the window, my hands clasped around a cup I didn't drink from. Carlos showed up right on time. Tall, mid-40s, salt and pepper hair, the kind of face that had seen too much but didn't carry bitterness, just awareness. He wore a grey jacket and carried no briefcase, no badge, just a small notebook. Mrs. Alvarez. Yes, I said. Standing, he gave a polite nod, sat across from me, and opened the notebook. Tell me what's going on. At first, I couldn't. The words tangled in my throat. Talking about Jose's betrayal made it too real. But Carlos had this quiet patience. He didn't rush me, didn't interrupt. So I told him about the perfume, the hotel receipt, the boutique bag, Sofia, the laughter through the window. He listened, writing occasionally, his pen scratching lightly. When I finished, he looked up. You've done half the work already, he said. Most people come to me with gut feelings. You came with evidence. I let out a shaky laugh. I guess that's the baker in me. I like recipes. I need to see the ingredients before I believe something exists. That earned a small smile from him. Then you'll appreciate what I do. Everything I find, you'll see with your own eyes. Pictures. Timestamps. Proof. The word proof steadied me. How long does it take? I asked. Depends on his routine. I'll follow him discreetly. Track locations. Document meetings. You said he leaves at 6 most nights. Yes. And he says he's working inventory this week. But... Carlos nodded. Then I'll start tonight. He slid a small form across the table. Standard agreement. You can end it any time. I signed without hesitation. My hands were trembling so badly I smudged the ink. That night, when Jose left again, I pretended to watch TV. The minute the door closed, I texted Carlos the license plate number and route he usually took. 15 minutes later, a single reply. Got him. I'll update you in the morning. The waiting was torture. Every tick of the clock sounded louder. Every passing car made me jump. I tried baking to calm down, but I burned 2 trays of croissants. My mind kept spinning images I didn't want to see his hand on her back. Her laugh echoing in some dim hotel room. When the front door finally opened after midnight, I pretended to be asleep. He moved quietly, as if not to wake me. The scent followed him again, sweet. Floral, guilty. I kept my eyes closed. Carlos texted me at 9:04 the next day. You were right. That was all. No details yet. Just those 3 words that confirmed everything I feared. An hour later, he called. We should meet in person. There's something you'll want to see. I left the bakery under the excuse of meeting a supplier. My assistant handled the counter. She didn't notice my hands shaking. We met in the same cafe. Carlos had his notebook open and a manila folder beside him. He slid the folder toward me. Photos, all taken last night between 7:30 and 9. To where? I hesitated, then opened it. Jose and Sophia at a restaurant laughing, leaning close. Another at the parking lot. Her hand on his chest. Then one more his arm around her shoulders. Both of them heading into a hotel. A hotel I recognised, the same one from the receipt. The edges of the photo blurred as tears filled my eyes. Carlos spoke gently. I'm sorry. Mrs. Alvarez. I don't show everything if clients don't ask for it. You've seen enough. I nodded, pressing the folder closed. Thank you. I needed to know. He studied me for a moment. Most people, when they find out, they either explode or collapse. You're doing neither. I can't afford to, I said. I have a son. I have a business. And what do you want to do next? I stared out the window. Outside, a woman walked her dog, sunlight bouncing off the glass storefronts. Life went on, oblivious to my world breaking quietly inside a manila folder. I want the truth to mean something, I said finally. Not just pain. I want to use it. Carlos's brow lifted. Use it how? I don't know yet, I said softly. But I'll find a way. Over the next few days, Carlos continued sending updates, photos, logs, details I couldn't bring myself to open right away. Each time I saw his name on my phone, my stomach twisted. Jose acted as if everything was normal. He still asked if I'd eaten, still laughed with Alex at dinner, still left his wedding ring on the counter before bed, like it meant something. Sometimes I wondered if he noticed my silence, or if lies had made him deaf to everything that wasn't convenient. 3 nights later, Carlos called again. I have something else for you, he said. His tone was different, tighter, more serious. I think it's not just an affair. What do you mean? I overheard them talking in the hotel parking lot. Your husband mentioned something about the bakery ownership. Accounts. Profit split. It sounded like they're planning something. I froze. Planning what? I can't be certain yet, but from the phrasing, she won't see it coming, and will move it before the divorce. It sounded financial. My blood ran cold. He continued. I'll get you a recording next time, if I can... But I wanted you to be prepared. Prepared. The word echoed in my head. It was no longer about betrayal of love. It was betrayal of everything. The life we built. The business we shared. That night, I didn't cry. I sat in the dark, watching the clock, listening to the soft hum of the refrigerator. I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who believed love meant safety, who built her life on trust. That girl was gone now. In her place was someone who understood that truth was the only weapon left. When Jose came home past midnight, I didn't look up. Long night, I asked. He yawned, rubbing his eyes. Yeah, just work. I smiled, the kind of smile that hides knives. Of course, I said. Before bed, I texted Carlos one more time. Keep going. I want everything recorded, every word, every plan. His reply came a minute later. Understood. I turned off the phone, exhaled slowly, and looked at my reflection in the dark window. The woman staring back wasn't broken. She was learning how to rebuild one piece of truth at a time. When the truth finally arrived, it didn't come crashing in with fireworks or shouting. It crept quietly through a file. A photo, a voice recorded in the dark. Carlos called early one morning. I have what you asked for, he said. Meet me at the same cafe. It was raining that day, thin and grey. The streets of Dallas shimmered like old silver. I walked fast, clutching my coat, trying to keep my breath steady. I had imagined this moment for days, but now that it was here, my body felt hollow. Carlos was already there, same corner seat. Black coffee, untouched. A small recorder sat on the table beside a sealed envelope. He didn't waste time. Listen first, he said. pressing play. The sound was grainy, filled with background noise, a parking lot maybe. Cars passing, rain tapping metal. Then, a voice, Jose's voice. Once the transfer's done, she can't touch a thing. The bakery will be under the new LLC. She'll sign it thinking it's just a renewal. And then another voice, female, soft, familiar in the worst possible way. Sofia, you're sure she won't notice? Maria never checks the paperwork. She trusts me. A pause. Then laughter low, close, intimate. I pressed a hand to my mouth. I could taste metal. Or maybe it was the bitterness rising from my stomach. Carlos watched me carefully, saying nothing. When the recording ended, he slid the envelope across the table. These are the photos from last night. The audio's timestamped and backed up. Inside were images. Jose and Sofia leaving an office building. I recognised the accountants. Then, later that night, another sequence dinner, a hotel lobby, a kiss. The proof was complete now. What had been suspicion was now a documented fact. Neatly organised in a manila envelope, I didn't cry. There was no space left for that. Only a quiet, controlled fury that burned like a clean flame. After the meeting, I drove aimlessly through the city, the rain streaking my windshield like melting glass. I passed places that had meant something once our first apartment. The park where Alex learned to ride his bike. The flower shop where Jose used to buy me lilies. Everything looked the same, but it wasn't. Or maybe I wasn't. At a red light, I caught sight of myself in the mirror, eyes dry. Face still, expression unreadable. It startled me. How calm I looked, as if betrayal had carved out all the unnecessary emotions. Leaving only clarity, I turned toward the bakery. The smell of butter and sugar greeted me as I stepped inside my sanctuary, my battlefield. The ovens hummed softly, the air thick with warmth. My assistant, Clara, looked up from the counter. You okay? Mrs. Alvarez. You look pale. I'm fine, I lied, just didn't sleep. She smiled sympathetically. I'll start the morning batch. As she turned away, I walked to the back office, the one Jose and I used to share. His name was still on the door, next to mine, written in the same looping font I'd chosen 15 years ago. Maria and José's Panadería. I stood there for a long time, staring at the letters until they blurred. Later that afternoon, Alex came by after school, still in his firefighter academy uniform. He brought his usual grin, the one that always softened me. Hey, Mom, brought you coffee. Thanks, mi corazón, I said. Trying to sound normal, he leaned against the counter, sipping his drink. Dad called me earlier, said you two might sell part of the bakery. Something about restructuring. The cup slipped from my hand, landing on the counter with a dull thud. He said that, yeah, he mentioned you're signing paperwork soon. Is that true? I forced a smile. Nothing's finalised yet. Alex frowned. You okay? Mom, you look like you're carrying the weight of the whole city. I'm fine, I said again. Too fast. He didn't believe me. But he didn't press. He never did. When he left, I locked the office door behind me. Then I took out the recorder and played the clip again. This time, I listened not as a wife, but as a woman calculating her next move. That night, I didn't confront Jose. Not yet. I needed to understand the full picture, how far he'd gone, how much he'd already taken. Carlos sent one last message before midnight. They met again tonight. Discussing your property title. You were right, he's preparing to move ownership into a joint shell company. I'll send the transcript tomorrow. So that was it. Not just love stolen, but legacy. 40 years of kneading dough, saving pennies, building something real reduced to a line on a fake document. I opened my old photo album, the one with our first bakery sign. Jose standing beside me, flour on his hands and pride in his eyes. Why? I whispered to the photo. Was it greed or just boredom? The photo didn't answer. The next morning, I called Carlos. I want everything, I said. Recordings, photos, files, make copies and send them to me. I already have. And Maria, he hesitated, whatever you're planning. Be careful. People get reckless when they're cornered. I'm not reckless, I said quietly. I'm deliberate. The bakery filled with customers that day. Laughter and chatter bouncing off the tiled walls. From the outside, everything looked the same. No one saw the storm brewing behind my polite smile. In the evening, after closing, I went through the financial drawers, invoices, supplier contracts, ownership certificates, all mine. But tucked behind one folder, I found something new, a draft agreement, unsigned, dated 3 days ago. Transfer of business ownership. 50% to Julian and Associates LLC. Julian, Sophia's brother. My vision blurred, but my mind stayed sharp. He'd already begun. I called Carlos again. I found it, I said. He's moving money through her brother. I'll get bank verification, he replied. Do you want to press charges? Not yet, I said. I want him to think I'm still blind. Carlos paused. That's dangerous. Maria, so is betrayal. I said, but at least this time, I'll be the one holding the knife. That night, Jose came home late again. I was sitting at the kitchen table, pretending to review invoices. He kissed the top of my head, casual, unbothered. You're up late. Mi amor, go to bed. I couldn't sleep. I said softly. Too much on my mind. He smiled faintly. Don't overthink it. You worry too much. I looked at him, really looked. The man I'd built a life with, shared a business with, raised a child with, and now, the man who'd chosen to dismantle all of it, piece by piece, while still pretending to love me. For the first time, I saw him clearly not as my husband, but as a stranger wearing his face. Maybe you're right, I said. Maybe I do worry too much. He chuckled, kissed my cheek, and walked upstairs. When I heard the bedroom door close, I whispered to the empty kitchen, Enjoy your sleep. Jose, you won't rest easy much longer. The next morning, I met Carlos again, this time not at a cafe, but in the parking lot behind the bakery. He handed me a USB drive. Everything's here. Videos, photos, full transcript. I took it carefully, feeling the weight of it in my palm. It was light, almost insignificant, yet it held the power to end a marriage, expose a lie, reclaim a life. Carlos looked at me, his voice steady but respectful. You have enough evidence to destroy him. Maria, what do you do next? That's up to you. I met his gaze. No, Carlos, I don't want to destroy him. He raised an eyebrow. I want to show everyone who he really is, I said quietly, and let the truth do the rest. That night, I sat in my office, the USB plugged into my laptop, one by one. I opened the files, the images, the audio, the messages. Each one was a small wound reopening. But together, they formed something stronger, a clear, undeniable map of deceit. I backed up everything twice, one copy for me, one for justice. Then I poured myself a glass of wine, the same red he used to bring home after good sales. I raised it toward the empty chair across the desk and whispered, To the truth, Jose, may it taste as bitter to you as it once did to me. By the time dawn crept through the blinds, Maria had already made her decision. No more denial, no more waiting. The truth wasn't just a knife, it was a scalpel, and she would use it carefully. The bakery opened at 6, as it always did. The smell of sweet bread filled the air, mingling with the low hum of the mixers. Life went on, at least on the surface, but behind the counter, Maria was dissecting everything. Every invoice, every ledger entry, every email Jose had ever sent from the company account. Her hands moved automatically, kneading dough, folding parchment, setting trays while her mind pieced together the anatomy of betrayal. By noon, Carlos arrived, dressed casually, but with that precise look that said he was carrying something important. He waited until the last customer left before locking the door and pulling out a folder. Found what you were looking for, he said, placing it on the table, and you're not going to like it. Maria's stomach tightened. How bad? Carlos sighed. Worse than you thought. They've been planning this for months. The new LLC Julian and Associates is a shell company registered under Sophia's brother's name. But the controlling interest, it's Jose's, hidden through a trust in the Cayman Islands. She stared at him. He's using offshore accounts, Carlos nodded, and not just to move bakery profits. He's been transferring assets, equipment, vehicles, even your delivery contracts, piece by piece. He's stripping the bakery down. Maria felt a sharp chill crawl up her spine. How much? Everything. Within 3 months, the bakery would have been a hollow shell. The name, the recipes, the supplier list all rebranded under his new venture. Sophia's set to manage it. They've already started buying a new property in Fort Worth. Maria's hands trembled slightly. And I'm supposed to be the fool signing it all away. Carlos's gaze softened. You still have time to stop it. But you'll need proof that can hold up in court, digital and hard copy. Maria nodded slowly. Then we take everything they've built and expose it brick by brick. That afternoon, Maria called in sick. She left the bakery in Clara's hands and drove home, each turn of the wheel sharpening her focus. At the house, she went straight to the office, Jose's domain. The smell of his cologne still lingered faintly, mixed with the scent of ink and paper. On the desk, a laptop, perfectly arranged files, a locked drawer. She'd lived with this man for 20 years. She knew his rhythms, his habits, his hiding places. She found the key in the third drawer of the filing cabinet, hidden beneath a stack of old utility bills. Inside the locked drawer were flash drives, checkbooks, and one black notebook. She opened it. Inside were handwritten notes, dates, transactions, initials, and one line circled twice in red ink. Final transfer, December 2nd. Maria signs? Her stomach turned. It wasn't just betrayal, it was execution. Premeditated and methodical. When Jose came home that evening, Maria was already there, dinner prepared. Candles lit. The scene looked normal, almost loving. He smiled. Surprised? What's all this? She smiled back. Just wanted to do something nice. They ate together. Talked about Alex's training. The bakery's new seasonal orders. Jose seemed relaxed. Confident too, confident. When he reached for the wine, she met his eyes. You know, I looked at the bakery books today. He froze for half a second. Yeah, I noticed some odd transfers. Maybe I'm reading it wrong. He chuckled softly. That dismissive tone she knew too well. You always overthink things. Maria, I told you. I'm restructuring to save on taxes. She tilted her head. Through the Cayman Islands, his fork clattered against the plate. The silence that followed was thick enough to cut with a knife. What did you say? He asked slowly. I said. She repeated evenly. The Cayman Islands, the offshore trust, the new LLC, the property in Fort Worth. Jose's face drained of colour. You've been snooping. No, she said quietly. I've been waking up. He stood up, trying to reassert control. You don't understand how business works. I was protecting us. By stealing from me. His jaw clenched. I built that bakery too. Maria, with my father's loan, she said sharply. With my recipes, with my labour. You managed the numbers. Jose, and now you're using those numbers to erase me. He leaned forward, voice dropping. You don't want to do this. I already have, she said. He blinked. What does that mean? Maria rose from her chair and reached into her bag. She pulled out the black notebook. I found your ledger, she said, and Carlos found your accounts. Every transfer, every document, every recording. Jose's confidence cracked. Carlos, yes, she said. My private investigator, not your accountant. His mouth opened, but no words came. You thought I'd stay blind, Maria said softly. You thought I'd sign whatever you put in front of me. You've been treating me like a relic. Jose, but I built that bakery from nothing, and I will burn it down before I let you take it. Jose's voice turned cold. You wouldn't dare. Try me, she whispered. He left the table in silence. The front door slammed a minute later. Maria sat back down, exhaled slowly, and let her hands shake now that he was gone. Then she opened her phone and texted Carlos. He knows. We move now. The next few days blurred into one controlled storm. Carlos helped her file a motion to freeze the bakery's assets. They gathered bank statements, contracts, timestamps, and witness statements. Maria even brought Clara in quietly, showing her just enough to gain an ally. Clara's eyes widened when she saw the evidence. He was going to take everything. Yes, Maria said simply, but not anymore. Together. They stayed late each night, scanning documents and organising files. And when the papers were ready, Carlos smiled grimly. This will hit him like a freight train. The final blow came at a board meeting Jose himself had called. He'd planned to finalise the restructuring. He arrived in his tailored suit, Sophia by his side, both of them confident, rehearsed. Maria was already there, calm, composed, a folder in front of her, when the notary asked for signatures. She stood up. Before we proceed, she said, her voice clear, I have a few documents of my own. Jose frowned. Maria, what are you doing? She opened her folder and spread the pages across the table. Bank transfers, offshore accounts, email printouts, photographs. The room went dead silent. These, she said, are records of unauthorised transactions made from our joint business account. Funds moved through shell corporations connected to you. Jose, and this she held up the photo of him. And Sophia is the reason why. Sophia's face went pale. Jose reached out as if to snatch the papers, but Maria slid them away smoothly. They've already been submitted to my attorney, she said, and to the district office for fraud investigation. Sophia whispered something under her breath and stormed out. Jose looked around the room, realization dawning that there was no saving this. The notary quietly packed up his things. Maria met her husband's eyes one last time. You wanted everything. Jose, now you'll get it, just not the way you planned. That evening, after the chaos had settled, Maria walked through the bakery one more time. The ovens hummed gently. The smell of rising dough filled the air. It was hers again, not untouched, but reclaimed. Clara joined her by the counter. What happens now? Maria smiled faintly. Now. We bake, we rebuild, and we rename. Rename. She nodded. No more Maria and Jose's. It's time for something new. Clara grinned. What will you call it? Maria looked toward the window, where the late sun painted the tiles gold. She whispered, La verdad. Clara tilted her head. The truth? Yes, Maria said, because that's what saved us. That night, when Maria finally lay in bed, the silence was different. No longer heavy, no longer filled with unspoken questions. Just quiet, earned quiet. She closed her eyes, her thoughts steady. The truth hadn't destroyed her life, it had simply revealed who deserved to remain in it. And tomorrow, she would wake up not as a victim, but as the woman who took back everything that was hers. By the next morning, Maria thought the worst was over. She had the documents. She had the truth. Jose was cornered. Sophia was gone. And the bakery was safe legally, at least, but she underestimated how fast secrets could spread in Dallas, and how quickly the truth could ignite. It started quietly, like smoke before a blaze. A few whispers in the neighborhood Facebook group. Someone had seen Sophia leaving Jose's house late at night. Someone else mentioned the fight at the bakery. Someone claimed Maria had caught them red-handed. Maria didn't post anything herself. She hadn't needed to. By noon, the whispers became screenshots. And screenshots became posts. Her phone vibrated non-stop. Friends texted her cautiously. Co-workers called just to check in. She turned off her notifications and went back to work, trying to keep her breathing steady as the mixer roared in the background. But at 2:07 p.m., Clara came running from the front counter. Maria, she whispered, eyes wide. You need to see this. She held up her phone. On the screen was a video low resolution, shaky, recorded from a distance. It showed Jose and Sophia arguing outside a restaurant. The caption read, "When your husband's affair partner dumps him after the bakery scandal." It had over 1,000 shares. Maria's stomach turned. Who posted that? Clara scrolled. A local gossip account, Dallas After Dark. They post everything from restaurant openings to scandals. Maria wiped her hands on her apron, staring at the flour dust on her palms. It's going to get worse before it gets better. And she was right. By evening, the bakery's Yelp page had exploded with fake reviews, some mocking Jose, some calling Maria a queen of revenge. Someone even edited the bakery's Google Maps name to La Verdad, home of justice rolls. Clara tried to hide her laughter. At least they like the cinnamon rolls. Maria shook her head. This isn't funny. This is public humiliation for everyone. Clara's smile faded. You didn't leak it, did you? Maria looked away. No, Maria, I didn't, she said firmly. But I didn't stop it either. That night, Maria sat in her car outside the bakery long after closing. The parking lot was quiet except for the distant hum of traffic. She scrolled through her phone again. The posts, the memes, the comments, they all blurred into a single message. Everyone knew. Part of her felt sick. Another part quiet, buried deep, felt something else. Relief. The truth was finally out, and though the fire was messy and uncontrolled, it burned away the last of her shame. The next morning, a news van parked across from the bakery. A reporter from Channel 8 knocked on the door. Mrs. Alvarez, we'd like to ask a few questions about your husband's alleged misconduct. Maria smiled tightly. No comment. They didn't need her words anyway. By evening, her story was everywhere. Dallas baker reclaims business after husband's affair and fraud. From sugar to scandal. Inside the fall of Alvarez Bakery. Yeah, it wasn't the kind of fame she'd ever wanted, but it was visibility, and in business, visibility could mean survival. Orders poured in. People lined up to support her. Some out of sympathy, others out of sheer curiosity. When Clara handed her the day's receipts, she stared at the total. It was double their usual Saturday sales. People love a redemption arc, Clara said with a wry grin. Maria didn't answer. She wasn't sure if she wanted to be loved for her pain. That weekend, Jose called. She let it ring twice before answering. Maria, his voice rasped. You need to make this stop. I didn't start it. You think this is funny? My clients dropped me. I lost my position at the firm. Sophia's gone. And everyone's treating me like a criminal. You are one, she said evenly. He groaned. Maria, you've made your point. You won. Now stop feeding this circus before it destroys both of us. She closed her eyes, leaning back in her chair. I didn't leak anything. Jose, maybe the truth leaked itself. You're enjoying this? He accused. She hesitated. No, I'm surviving it. He paused, his tone softening. Please. For Alex's sake. The mention of their son stung. Alex had been quiet through it all, watchful, guarded. He hadn't said much since finding out about the affair. He'd simply told her, I'm with you, Mom. And that was all. Now, she thought of how this must look to him. His parents torn apart, the family's name trending online. She swallowed hard. I'll do what I can to calm things down, she said finally. but I won't apologize for telling the truth. Jose sighed. Then we're both ruined. No, Maria said softly. Only one of us is. She hung up. The next few days were chaos. The bakery was busier than ever, yet the tension clung to the air like humidity. Some customers whispered when Maria passed. Some asked intrusive questions about Sophia. About Jose? About the recording. Maria smiled politely, but every word chipped away at her calm. By Thursday, she decided to take control of the narrative herself. That night, after Alex went to bed, she opened her laptop and wrote a short post for the bakery's official page. To our customers, thank you for your kindness and support. The past few weeks have been difficult, both personally and professionally. I founded this bakery with love, and that's what I intend to continue sharing with honesty, with integrity, and with gratitude. We are not defined by betrayal, but by resilience. Maria Alvarez. She hesitated before hitting post, then pressed it anyway. Within hours, hundreds of comments flooded in. You're an inspiration. Women like you remind us to keep standing. He messed with the wrong baker. Maria smiled faintly. She hadn't asked for vengeance, but she had received validation. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. By the following week, the scandal began to cool. The gossip accounts moved on to newer stories, some influencers' breakup, a politician's affair, but the damage had been done. Jose's reputation was ruined. Sophia had left town, and Maria, she was still standing, flour on her hands, heart steadier than it had been in months. One afternoon, as she locked up the bakery, Alex walked in. Hey, Mom, he said quietly. She turned. Hey, honey, long day. He nodded. Everyone at school's been talking about. You know, Maria sighed. I know. I'm sorry you had to deal with that. He leaned against the counter. Don't be. I'm proud of you. She blinked. Proud. Yeah. You didn't hide. You didn't let him win. You just stood your ground. Maria smiled softly, eyes stinging. Thank you. He grinned. Also, you're kind of famous now. My friends say your croissants are the pastry of vengeance. She laughed for the first time in days. Tell them vengeance tastes better with extra butter. That night, as she wiped down the counters, Maria caught her reflection in the glass display. She looked older. Yes, but stronger too. There was no trace of the woman who once flinched at the sound of her husband's keys. No shadow of the doubt that had haunted her. The fire had burned through everything, but it had also cleared the way for something new. Later, she sat outside the bakery with a cup of tea. The air was cool, the sky soft with the last hint of orange. Carlos stopped by, hands in his jacket pockets. Looks like business is booming, he said. Maria smiled faintly. Scandal sells. Apparently, he nodded. But so does honesty. People can tell the difference. She looked at him. You think I did the right thing? Carlos shrugged. You told the truth. That's all anyone can do. The firestorm, well, that's just the world reacting. Maria took a sip of tea, letting his words settle. Then she whispered, half to herself. Maybe the world needed to react, as the lights of the city shimmered in the distance. Maria finally felt what she hadn't in months, peace. Not silence, not forgetfulness, but peace born of clarity. She knew the fire would leave scars, but scars were proof that she had survived something worth surviving. And tomorrow, she would open the doors again, smile at her customers, and serve them something sweet, made with the same hands that had once trembled, but no longer did. For weeks, I lived inside a silence that felt heavier than noise. The scandal had burned through everything our family name. Jose's career, Sophia's pride, but what came after was worse. The stillness, the waiting, the quiet in which everyone decided what to believe. And then, one afternoon, Alex asked the question I'd been dreading. Mom, he said carefully, standing by the counter, when are you going to talk to Dad? I froze mid-swipe, a damp towel in my hand. Talk to him. About what? He frowned. About everything. The divorce, the bakery, the videos? There it was, the word that still made me wince. Alex, I said, setting the towel aside. There's nothing to discuss. It's done. He crossed his arms, his expression so much like his father's that it stung. It doesn't feel done. It feels like everyone's pretending to move on. But no one actually has. I looked at him, my son, my only anchor, and realised he was right. We hadn't healed. We had only hidden. That night, after closing the bakery, I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the divorce papers. They were still unsigned. I'd been holding them hostage, as if the signature itself were an admission of defeat. But all it was now was unfinished business. When my phone buzzed with an incoming text, I already knew who it was. Jose, we need to talk. Tomorrow. For a long moment, I just stared at the message. Then I typed, the house, The next day, I baked as if possessed, kneading, rolling. Slicing the rhythm kept me from thinking. By the time Alex came home, I'd filled every tray in the kitchen. He took one look at me and sighed. "You're stress baking again." "I'm preparing," I said simply. "For what?" "For the end." At exactly 5, a car door slammed outside. I wiped my hands and went to the window. Jose stood there, thinner than before. His once perfect posture slightly slouched. He was wearing the same blue shirt I'd given him on his birthday years ago. The one I used to iron on Sunday mornings while he read the paper. For a second, the sight of him hit me with a pang so sharp it took my breath. Then I remembered Sophia's perfume on that same shirt, and the pain sharpened into clarity. I opened the door before he could knock. "Come in," I said flatly. He stepped inside, looking around the kitchen like it was a museum exhibit. "It hasn't changed." "It wasn't supposed to," I said. "You were." We sat across from each other at the table. Between us lay the manila folder divorce papers, receipts, and a USB drive. Jose stared at it. "So this is how it ends." "This is how it began to end," I corrected. He rubbed his temples. "Maria, I've lost everything. My firm, my friends. Even Sophia's gone. I'm not asking for forgiveness. Just closure." I leaned back, folding my arms. "Closure comes after honesty." He looked up. "I've been honest. I told you it was over." "No," I said, my voice low. "You told me what was convenient, but you never told me why." He hesitated, then sighed. "You want the truth? Fine." I felt invisible. "You had the bakery, the long hours, the reputation. You didn't need me anymore." I let out a short, bitter laugh. "So you found someone who did." He flinched. "You think betrayal fills the space where love used to be?" I asked quietly. "It doesn't. It just deepens it." Jose's eyes dropped. "You were always stronger than me." "I had to be," I said. "You gave me no choice." At that moment, Alex appeared in the doorway. I hadn't expected him to come home early. Neither had Jose. "Dad," he said, voice stiff. "Alex." Jose began, standing. I was going to call. "Don't," Alex cut in. "Don't pretend this is normal." Jose's face fell. "Son, please. I made mistakes." "But mistakes." Alex's voice cracked. "You betrayed Mom. You tried to steal from her. You embarrassed all of us in front of the whole city." "Alex," I warned softly, but he shook his head. "No." "Mom." He needs to hear this. Jose's shoulders sagged. "I know what I did. You think I don't live with it every day?" "Good." Alex snapped. "Because we live with it too." The silence that followed was unbearable. Then Jose spoke, quietly. "You think I wanted to hurt you? Either of you. I thought I could build something new. But it was all a lie. She was a lie. Everything was." Maria watched him carefully. For the first time, she saw something like truth, not justification, not manipulation, but raw defeat. "Then do one honest thing," she said. "Sign the papers." Jose looked up, eyes wet. "Is that really what you want?" Maria didn't blink. "It's what's left." He reached for the pen. His hand trembled slightly as he wrote his name, Jose Alvarez. The sound of the pen scratching across the paper was quiet, but final. He set it down, exhaling shakily. "There. You have your freedom." Maria nodded. "And you have yours. Use it wisely." Jose gave a hollow laugh. "I don't even know what that means anymore." "Then maybe," she said softly, "that's your punishment." He stood to leave, but paused at the door. "Maria, I did love you. Maybe I still do." She looked at him for a long moment. "Then you should have protected what you loved, not destroyed it." He nodded once, defeated, and walked out into the evening. Through the window, Maria watched him go, his shadow stretching long across the driveway before fading into the orange dusk. Alex exhaled loudly. "It's over." "Yes," Maria said, finally. He looked at her. "Do you feel better?" She thought about it. Not better, lighter. He sat beside her. "You think he meant it what he said?" "Probably," she replied. "But regret doesn't erase the damage." They sat in silence for a while, the last light slipping through the blinds. Then Alex reached over and took her hand. "Mom?" "Yes. I don't ever want to be the kind of man who runs from the people who love him." Her chest tightened. "Then don't be the one who stays. Even when it's hard." He nodded slowly. And for the first time in months, his face softened. That weekend, Maria took the signed papers to her lawyer. Laura greeted her with a warm smile. "You did it." Maria handed her the folder. He signed. "No contest." Laura flipped through the pages. Nodding. "That means the bakery's fully yours now. You can finally move forward." Maria smiled faintly. "I already have." Laura studied her. "You don't sound angry." "I'm not." Maria said, "Anger got me here. but it won't get me out. Laura closed the folder. Then let's call this what it is, freedom, with a hint of justice. Maria laughed softly. I'll take that. That night, the bakery was quiet. Maria sat at one of the tables with a glass of wine, the smell of sugar and yeast still lingering in the air. She opened her journal and wrote, "The truth set me free, but it also burned everything I thought I needed." Maybe that's what freedom really is, what remains when everything false is gone. She looked up at the ovens, empty now, cooling slowly. The heat had faded, but the warmth remained. Alex's laughter drifted from upstairs. Faint but real, Maria smiled. The reckoning had come not just for Jose, but for her too. And though it had cost everything, it had given her something rarer, clarity. As she turned off the lights, she whispered to the empty room, "Goodbye." Jose? It wasn't bitter. It wasn't soft. It was final, the kind of goodbye that didn't echo because there was nothing left to echo against. You'd think that once the storm breaks, the worst has passed. But sometimes, what follows the lightning isn't calm, it's the echo, the noise that lingers after everything seems over. That was how it felt the month after Jose signed the divorce papers. The bakery had become a strange kind of sanctuary and stage at once. People came in pretending to buy croissants, but really just wanted to look at me, the woman who'd brought down her cheating husband and his corporate mistress. They whispered like the smell of scandal was baked into the bread. Poor thing. One woman murmured near the window. Poor him. Another corrected, he lost everything. And someone always added, she doesn't look poor to me. I'd learned to smile politely, take their money, and walk back to the kitchen before my blood boiled. Because the truth was, they weren't wrong. I didn't look poor. I looked alive. Laura said the PR fallout was predictable. You embarrassed a man who's used to being admired, she said during one of our coffee meetings. The press will chew on that for a while. Let them choke, I replied. She laughed, stirring her espresso. Spoken like a woman who's done hiding. But even she couldn't have predicted what came next. One morning, while I was frosting cinnamon rolls, Alex came rushing in with his phone. "Mom, you're trending." I wiped my hands. That's not a sentence any parent wants to hear. He grinned nervously. "No, it's good sort of... Someone posted a clip from that interview you did with the local news last week. The one I didn't even want to do. Yeah, that one." He handed me the phone. The video was a short reel, May, standing in front of the bakery, saying, "Truth doesn't destroy families. Lies do." The clip had gone viral. Thousands of likes, shares, and a hashtag. "Truth over sugar." I blinked. They turned my pain into a slogan. Alex shrugged. "Welcome to the internet." The next few days were chaos. Customers doubled, then tripled. By the weekend, there was a line outside the bakery that wrapped around the block. Some came for pastries, most came for a story. They called me the woman who exposed corruption and kept baking. Reporters wanted interviews, talk shows wanted segments. A documentary producer even emailed, asking if I'd consider recreating key moments from the scandal. I declined. Of course, but not before laughing for 5 straight minutes. Jose, meanwhile, wasn't doing as well. I learned from Laura that the firm he'd once managed had filed for bankruptcy. His remaining assets were under review. Sofia, the woman who had once called herself his business partner, had fled overseas. The public had turned against both of them fast. That's the thing about greed, it buys loyalty, but never forgiveness. And when the money runs out, so does the sympathy. One night, as I was closing up, a black car pulled up outside. Jose stepped out. He looked exhausted, like the air itself had been draining him for weeks. His hair was greyer, his suit wrinkled. I thought of pretending I hadn't seen him, but he caught my eye and gave a small, uncertain wave. I sighed, unlocked the door, and motioned him in. He hesitated at the threshold, then said quietly, "You're busier than ever." "Fame by accident," I said, "not by choice." He smiled faintly. "You always did make the best of things." I crossed my arms. "What do you want?" "Jose." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded newspaper. "They're writing about us again." I didn't take it. "Let them. I'm not afraid of ink." "It's not just ink," he said. "It's gossip. They're saying you planned everything, that you set me up, leaked the files yourself." I almost laughed. "Do you really think I'm that strategic?" He hesitated. "You are always smarter than me." "That's not a compliment anymore," I said. For a moment, we just stood there, the two of us surrounded by the smell of butter and sugar and the ghosts of everything we'd been. "Jose," I said finally, "you came here because you're scared, not of the press, of being forgotten." He looked down. "Maybe?" I softened a little. You wanted control over everything. And now you have control over nothing. That's not my fault." He nodded, eyes wet. "I know. Then stop coming here." His voice broke. "I don't know where else to go." "Then start with yourself," I said. "It's time you did." He looked at me for a long time before finally turning toward the door. "You really don't hate me, do you?" I thought about it. "No," I said. I outgrew it after he left. I sat in the quiet bakery and stared at the paper he'd brought. The headline read, "Truth or Trap? The baker who exposed a scandal may have orchestrated it." It stung, but not the way I expected. Because I realised something. I didn't owe the world my innocence anymore. They could believe what they wanted. The truth had already done its job. A week later, the city hosted a food festival. I almost didn't go. Crowds still made me nervous, but Alex insisted. "Mom, people love you. Let them..." So I set up a booth, just pastries. No speeches, no statements. By noon, I had sold out of everything. A woman approached the counter, holding one of my tarts. "You know," she said, "I watched all those videos about you, and I decided to leave my husband." I blinked. "I don't think that's what I was encouraging." She smiled. "No, but you reminded me I wasn't crazy, that sometimes standing up for yourself looks like revenge to people who've never had to." And then she walked away. I stood there for a long time after that, feeling something I hadn't in months. Purpose. That night, when the booths closed and the city lights flickered on, Alex and I sat on the back of the truck, eating leftover muffins. He looked at me and grinned. "You're famous?" "Mom," I smirked. "So are pirates and outlaws." He laughed. "You know what I mean?" I nodded. "Yeah, and fame fades, but the truth stays, even when people twist it." He looked thoughtful. "Do you ever regret exposing him?" I looked out at the skyline. "No, I regret trusting the wrong person, but I'll never regret telling the truth." He smiled. "You sound like a quote they'd put on a coffee mug." I nudged him playfully. "Maybe I'll sell those next." By the time we got home, the inbox was full again. Emails from strangers, messages from women in other cities. They all said the same thing, in different words. "Thank you. You made me brave." I read them one by one until tears blurred the screen. For the first time, the echo didn't sound like gossip. It sounded like change. The next morning, Laura called. "You've been offered a column," she said, sounding almost giddy. "A lifestyle magazine wants you to write about resilience and rebuilding." I laughed. Me, the woman who nearly set her marriage on fire. "Exactly," Laura said. "They want authenticity, not perfection. You've got that in spades." I looked around the bakery, the flour-dusted counters, the fading smell of cinnamon, the sunlight streaming through the window. "Tell them yes," I said. The following weeks became a strange blend of normalcy and notoriety. I'd wake up, bake bread, answer emails from readers, and sometimes sit down to write about things I never thought I'd share. Loneliness, forgiveness, and the strange peace that comes after losing everything. Each piece I wrote ended the same way. You can survive the echo, you just have to stop listening to the noise. Months later, the bakery walls were covered with thank you notes from customers. Some were from women who'd left bad marriages. Some were from men who'd chosen to tell the truth before it destroyed them. The irony wasn't lost on me. The woman once defined by a scandal had somehow become a symbol of honesty. And maybe that was poetic justice in its quietest form. One evening, while locking up, I noticed a figure across the street, Jose again. But this time, he didn't come closer. He just watched for a moment, nodded once, and disappeared into the crowd. I stood there, feeling neither anger nor sadness, just closure. The kind that doesn't come with words, only distance. Later, as I wiped the counters and turned off the lights, I whispered to myself, "Let them talk," because they would. They always would, but their noise no longer reached me. What mattered wasn't the scandal that echoed, but the strength that answered back. When people talk about rebuilding, they imagine something like construction hammer, nail, blueprint, a straight path from broken to whole. But rebuilding a life isn't like that. It's quieter, slower. Sometimes it feels like you're laying bricks underwater. For months after the scandal cooled, I lived in that strange underwater silence. The noise had died down, but the stillness was its own kind of loud. Jose's name stopped appearing in headlines. Sophia's face disappeared from social media. The bakery's fame had stabilised into something real loyal customers. Steady income, no cameras, and me. I was learning what it meant to exist after the fire. The mornings were easier now. I'd wake before sunrise, walk to the bakery with Alex, and breathe in the smell of yeast and coffee. The bell over the door was still crooked, the counter still chipped. But somehow, the imperfections felt like part of the story. Sometimes I caught myself laughing again, really laughing. The kind that shakes your ribs loose. The kind I hadn't felt since before I knew what betrayal smelled like. It wasn't joy exactly. It was survival disguised as it. Laura visited one Sunday morning, holding a folder and a bottle of wine. 2 essentials for a woman reinventing herself, she declared. Morning wine, I teased. Don't judge the process. We sat in the back office, sunlight cutting through the blinds. She opened the folder. It was full of paperwork from the court. Your final settlement, she said. You own the bakery outright now. No strings, no clauses. I stared at the papers, trying to process what that meant. So it's really mine. It always was, she said softly. But now it's official. I felt something shift inside me, something that wasn't anger or grief. Maybe peace, maybe the faint outline of it. But peace, I learned, doesn't mean forgetting. It just means the memories don't bite as hard when they surface. Sometimes I'd catch a whiff of cologne in a grocery store aisle and think of him. Or see a woman with chestnut hair and wonder if Sophia had ever regretted anything. Those moments didn't send me spiralling anymore. They just passed through, like shadows across the floor. I wasn't defined by what had happened. I was defined by what I did after. The bakery had become more than a business. It was therapy disguised as labour. Every loaf I needed was a small act of rebellion against what had been taken from me. I started experimenting again. Pistachio croissant, orange brioche, lavender shortbread. My hands remembered what my heart had almost forgotten, that creating something beautiful after destruction was a kind of defiance. Alex helped out more, too. He'd inherited Jose's steady hands, but none of his father's ego. He was patient, focused, and maddeningly organised. Sometimes I'd watch him rolling dough and think, he's everything good I ever wanted to preserve. In late spring, I got an invitation to a local entrepreneurship event. The theme was starting over. Laura nudged me. You have to speak. Your story fits perfectly. I'm not a motivational speaker, I said. She grinned. No, you're better. You're real. So, I went. Standing on that small stage, I felt my pulse in my throat. The crowd was small, maybe 50 people, but their eyes were all on me. I talked about losing everything, about betrayal, fear, and the dangerous comfort of denial. Then I said, sometimes the people who set your life on fire are the same ones who taught you how to build it back stronger. When I stepped down, they clapped. Not the polite kind of clapping, but the kind that feels like recognition. Afterward, a young woman came up to me. I left a toxic business partnership last year, she said, voice trembling. Hearing you talk about starting over made me believe I can, too. That night, as I drove home, I realised I didn't just survive something, I'd built something new out of it. Jose tried to call once after that event. I let it go to voicemail. His message was short. Maria, I saw your talk. You're doing well. I'm glad. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. For all of it, I deleted it. Not out of spite, but because I didn't need it. Forgiveness wasn't something I could give him. It was something I'd already given myself. One afternoon, Alex found an old photo in a box behind the counter. It was from our first year in Dallas, me, Jose, and baby Alex standing outside the bakery. Flour on our faces. He held it up. Do you want to keep this? I looked at the picture for a long time. Then I smiled. Yes, but not because of him. Because of us. Because it's where it started. He nodded, slipping it into a new frame. We should put it up front. People like stories. Maybe they'll like this one, I said. Summer came, and with it, the city's annual business fair. The organisers asked if I'd host a booth again. This time, I wasn't just selling pastries, I was representing the bakery as a case study in resilience. The banner over my stall read, From burnt to golden, the bakery that refused to break. Corny, maybe, but I didn't mind. People stopped by, tasted my pastries, and asked about recipes, not rumours. It felt like a quiet kind of victory. After the fair, Laura and I sat in the empty booth, legs crossed. Sharing lemonade, you know, she said. When I first met you, you were terrified of confrontation. I still am, I said. I just learned how to use it, she grinned. And now I choose what's worth fighting for. As the months passed, Alex got accepted into a university program in Austin. The night he told me, I cried loudly. Embarrassingly, he laughed. Mom, it's 2 hours away. Not another planet. I know. I sniffed. I'm just proud. He smiled. You'll be fine without me. I looked around the bakery, the ovens humming, the shelves lined with pastries. I think I finally will be. After he left, the apartment felt too big. So I started writing more. The column Laura had helped me land was growing in readership. Letters came in from all over the country, people who had lost, rebuilt, or were still standing in their own ashes, looking for direction. I answered as many as I could, always ending with the same line. What rises from fire isn't the same as what burned. It's stronger. Rare, and infinitely more yours. One day, months later, I received a package, no return address. Inside was a small envelope with my name in José's handwriting. I hesitated before opening it. Inside was a single photo, the bakery, as it looked that first year we opened. On the back, a note. Thank you for teaching me what I destroyed. I hope you keep building. There was no signature, no contact info, just that. I slipped the photo into the same frame as the old family picture, side by side, not out of nostalgia, but because both belonged to the same story, life. I realised doesn't hand you clean endings. It hands you fragments, and it's up to you to make them mean something. For the first time in years, I felt proud of how I'd pieced mine together. By autumn, the bakery had expanded. We opened a second location downtown, smaller, cozier, full of sunlight and laughter. At the grand opening, I stood beside Alex, who'd driven back for the weekend, and said a few words. Everything good I have, I told the small crowd, came from something that almost destroyed me. So if you're standing in your own ashes, wait, let the smoke clear. You'll see what's left is yours to rebuild. They clapped. Some cried. I didn't. I just smiled. That night, after everyone had gone, I stood outside the new bakery and looked up at the sign. Maria's Hearth. I'd changed the name. Not because I wanted to erase the past, but because I finally understood it. A hearth isn't just where you bake, it's where you gather warmth after the fire. And for the first time, I felt that warmth was mine. Morning sunlight spilled through the bakery windows, soft and golden, the kind of light that made everything sugar dust. Flower trails, fingerprints on the glass, look like proof of life instead of imperfection. I used to wake up and think of what I'd lost. Now, I wake up and think of what I get to build today. That shift didn't happen overnight. It came slowly, like dawn, one gentle degree at a time, until I realised the darkness was gone. It's been a year since the day everything collapsed. And in that strange way life works. I feel more alive than ever. The bakery hums with a rhythm that's become almost sacred to me. The sound of dough slapping against the counter, the whir of the mixer, the low laughter of new staff. I've hired 2 young women from the culinary school, Elena and Priya, who remind me of myself years ago. Stubborn, creative, full of fire. Sometimes I catch them whispering about recipes or decorating cupcakes, and I can't help but smile. They don't know what storms came before this piece, but maybe that's the beauty of it. They're walking into a space that's already been through fire and survived. I call them the next generation of sweetness. They laugh every time, but I mean it. Alex visits most weekends now, driving in from Austin with bags of groceries and stories about campus life. He's more relaxed these days, his laughter easy, his eyes lighter. One Sunday afternoon, we sat on the porch, sharing coffee. "Mom," he said suddenly, "I talked about you in my ethics class." I raised an eyebrow. Should I be flattered or worried? He laughed. Flattered. We were discussing integrity in business, how to stand up for yourself without losing your humanity. I told them about how you handled Dad and Sophia, how you didn't destroy them, you just told the truth. I looked at him, surprised. And what did your professor say? That it was the perfect example of moral courage. I let out a breath I hadn't realised I was holding. For months, I had wondered if Alex resented me for exposing everything. But hearing him speak that way, it felt like the final confirmation that I hadn't just survived. I had set something right. After he left that day, I went upstairs to the small room I used as an office. On the wall hung my new column layout from the local paper, the Hearth Diaries. What started as a short weekly article about baking had become something else entirely, a conversation about resilience, second chances, and the small rituals that keep us human. I never mentioned names or details, but readers knew the truth behind the metaphors. Every recipe carried a piece of the story. Orange peel tart was about bitterness turned into flavour. Broken pie crust was about rebuilding what crumbles. And vanilla faith was about trusting the process. Even when you can't see what's rising. One morning, as I was checking emails, a message came through from a name I didn't recognise. "Dear Maria, I found your column through a friend. I'm going through something similar, betrayal, confusion, anger. I can't see how life goes on from here, but reading your words, it made me believe that maybe it does. Thank you for that. Clara, New Mexico." I read it 3 times. Then I sat back, eyes closed, and let the quiet wash over me. It was strange. A year ago, I had been the one writing messages like that in my head, asking the universe for a sign that pain would mean something someday. And now I had become that sign for someone else. That night, I wrote a new column called The Quiet After the Fire. They say peace is silence, but it's not. Peace is the sound of your own heartbeat after the noise fades. It's realizing that survival can be gentle, too. You don't always have to fight, sometimes it's enough just to stay. When I finished, I didn't cry, I just smiled, because that was the truest thing I'd ever written. In early autumn, I received a call from the local Chamber of Commerce. They wanted to nominate Maria's Hearth for Small Business of the Year. I almost laughed. "You're joking, right?" "Not at all," the woman said. "Your stories inspired a lot of people in Dallas. You've become kind of a symbol. A symbol." The word felt heavy, almost sacred, but also strange. I wasn't trying to be a symbol, I just didn't want to be broken anymore. The award ceremony was held in a downtown hotel ballroom, elegant, candlelit, full of faces I barely knew. When they called my name, I walked up to the stage, my heart pounding the way it had that day. I confronted the truth. I looked out at the crowd and said, "I built a bakery out of love. Then I rebuilt it out of pain. Now I keep it standing with gratitude." Sometimes what feels like an ending is just an invitation to begin again with cleaner hands and a steadier heart. There was a pause, then applause warm and rising, like the scent of bread from an oven. Afterward, someone asked if I'd ever forgive the people who hurt me. I thought for a long moment before answering. "I already did," I said, because if I didn't, I'd still be living in their story instead of mine. That night, I came home to the bakery. It was empty, silent, peaceful. I turned on one oven just to fill the air with warmth. I rolled out dough, not because I needed to, but because it calmed me. Flour floated in the air like dust motes in sunlight. The smell of butter and sugar reminded me of everything I'd fought for and everything I'd let go of. When the bread came out golden, I whispered to myself, "You made it, not as a boast, but as a promise." Weeks later, I visited the old park where Jose and I used to take Alex when he was little. It was empty that day, except for a few joggers and an old man feeding pigeons. I sat on the same bench, the one with initials carved into the wood. The carving had faded, almost invisible. I touched it lightly, then smiled. Some things are meant to fade. It doesn't mean they never mattered. It just means their time has passed. As winter approached, the bakery took on its festive glow garlands. Cinnamon candles? Cheerful chaos. Elena burned 3 trays of cookies in a row. Priya dropped an entire bowl of frosting. We laughed so hard we cried. In that laughter, I heard the sound of life uncomplicated, full, imperfect, real. And I realised something. I didn't want perfection. I wanted peace that smelled like cookies and sounded like laughter. That was enough. On New Year's Eve, Alex came home again. We stood outside the bakery as fireworks bloomed across the Dallas sky. "Mom," he said, "you know what, I think." "What?" "That Dad's betrayal wasn't the worst thing that happened to us." I looked at him. Startled, he smiled. "It was the thing that forced us to stop pretending we were fine. And that's what saved us." I stared at him, realising my son had grown wiser than I'd ever hoped. I squeezed his hand. "You're right." Later that night, when the city quieted, I wrote my first column of the new year. Sometimes, light doesn't come from forgiveness or forgetting. It comes from seeing yourself clearly for the first time and liking what you see. The woman who survived, who stayed kind, who kept creating even when her heart cracked open, that woman deserves the sunlight. When I hit send, I closed my laptop and sat in the stillness. Outside, the last fireworks faded, leaving only stars. I whispered to the empty room, "Happy New Year, Maria." And for once, it didn't sound like I was talking to a stranger. A few weeks later, on a quiet morning, I unlocked the bakery and turned the closed sign to open. The bell chimed softly, and the first customer of the day walked in, a woman I didn't know, with tired eyes and a hopeful smile. She hesitated at the counter. "Are you Maria?" "Yes," I said. "How can I help you?" "I read your column," she whispered. "I just wanted to see if the woman who wrote those words was real." I smiled. "Very real, and I make a mean almond croissant." She laughed through tears. "Then I'll take 2. As I handed her the pastries, she said, "Your story gave me courage." I nodded softly. Then it did what it was meant to. When she left, I looked out the window at the street bathed in sunlight. Dallas had never looked so bright. I thought of everything: the lies, the fire, the pain, the ash, and then of the life that grew from it. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't easy, but it was mine. And as the light filled the bakery, I whispered to myself one last time. The fire didn't end me, it refined me. The sky over Dallas that morning was soft and silver. The kind of sky that doesn't demand anything, just watches quietly, as if giving you space to breathe. Inside the bakery, the ovens hummed their low morning tune. The smell of rising bread filled the air, warm and forgiving. This is where I've learned that grace doesn't arrive with trumpets or miracles. It slips in quietly, between heartbeats, between the moment you exhale and realise you're not angry anymore. It's been 18 months since the scandal broke, and sometimes I still wake up half expecting chaos. I'll reach for my phone, bracing for messages, articles, judgments, but there's only silence, not emptiness, peace. I used to think grace was something given by others. Forgiveness, understanding, sympathy. But now I know it's something you choose to give yourself. It's the moment you stop punishing yourself for not knowing better before you did. It's whispering to your reflection, you're allowed to move on, and meaning it. The bakery has become more than a business. It's a gathering place. On Saturdays, we host something called the Hearth Hour. Locals bring coffee, sit at the long table, and share stories. No agenda, no judgment, just people talking about what they've lost and what they've built after. Sometimes it's a woman who just went through a divorce. Sometimes it's a retired teacher learning to live alone for the first time. Sometimes it's a college kid who failed his dream course and doesn't know who he is anymore. They come and they talk and they listen. And I bake because when hands are busy kneading, hearts find the courage to open. A few weeks ago, I received a letter from Sophia. Yes, that Sophia. I hadn't heard from her since the trial ended. Her handwriting was neat, familiar in a strange way, like a ghost from another version of my life. Dear Maria, I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know I understand now. Everything I took from you. I lost tenfold. The company failed. The investors left. I kept waiting for victory to feel sweet, but all I tasted was dust. If I could go back, I would have chosen differently. I hope you're happy. Truly. Sophia. I read it once. Then again. Then I folded it neatly and tucked it into a drawer, not as a keepsake. But as closure, I didn't feel anger, not pity either, just a kind of calm acknowledgement that her path had finally taught her what mine already had. Greed and guilt are both prisons, and grace is the key that unlocks them. Jose, on the other hand, is still somewhere between regret and denial. He tried to reach out once, through a mutual friend. Wanted to talk. I declined not out of hate, but because there was nothing left to say. I already said everything that mattered when I chose to stop living in his shadow. Maybe one day he'll find his own peace, but that's not my story to tell anymore. One night, after closing, I found myself sitting in the dark bakery, just me, the hum of the refrigerator, and the smell of cooling loaves. I thought about the word grace again. It's funny how it's always portrayed as something delicate angel wings, soft light, quiet hymns, but the kind of grace that saves you. It's not gentle. It's fierce. It's the moment you fall apart and still choose kindness. It's standing in the ruins of your life and saying, I will rebuild and I won't become bitter while doing it. That's the hardest promise to keep. Sometimes I still get emails from readers who ask, how do you forgive someone who doesn't deserve it? And my answer is always the same. Forgiveness isn't saying they deserve peace. It's saying you do, because if you wait for justice to make forgiveness easy, you'll wait forever. Forgiveness isn't a reward for others, it's oxygen for you. Last month, the Hearth Diaries reached its 1-year anniversary in print. My editor asked me to write a special piece titled What I Learned from the Fire. It took me 3 days to write and 3 more to cry over it. Here's what I wrote. I used to believe resilience was about strength, about never breaking. But now I know it's about bending without snapping. It's about being honest enough to say, this hurt me, and brave enough to say, but it didn't end me. We all walk through fire. Some people come out burned. Others come out forged. The difference isn't what the fire does to you. It's what you do after the fire leaves. When that column was published, letters poured in. People told me it was the first time they'd seen pain described without shame, that it made them want to try again, and that more than any award or bakery success felt like the real victory. One afternoon, I caught Alex in the bakery kitchen teaching a small group of kids how to decorate cookies. He'd volunteered to run a holiday program for children from low-income families. Watching him, I realised something. He wasn't just healing, he was growing roots. After class, I asked him, why this? Alex, why teaching? He grinned. Because you taught me that food isn't just about feeding people, it's about reminding them they're cared for. And in that moment, I saw a reflection of my younger self in his kindness. Not the broken version, not the fearful one, the hopeful one, the one who still believed in warmth. Now, sometimes when I close the bakery late at night, I light one small candle near the window. It's my quiet ritual, a symbol, for everyone who's still in the middle of their fire, for everyone who thinks the smoke will never clear, for everyone learning that grace isn't a miracle that arrives, it's a muscle that grows stronger every time you choose love over resentment. There's something else I've learned. Healing doesn't mean going back to who you were before. It means becoming someone new, someone softer, wiser, and freer. The world keeps telling us to move on, but maybe what we really need is to move through the grief, through the anger, through the silence, until one day you find yourself laughing again and it doesn't feel like betrayal. That's grace. This morning, I baked something special, lemon thyme cake. A recipe I avoided for a long time because it reminded me of the dinner party where I first sensed something was wrong with Jose and Sophia. But today, I made it differently lighter, airy, with a dusting of sugar on top. As I took the first bite, I didn't think of betrayal. I thought of balance, how even bitterness, in the right hands, can become flavour. That's what grace does. It doesn't erase what happened, it transforms how it tastes. In the window, a small sign now hangs beneath Maria's hearth. Come as you are, leave a little lighter. It's not just a slogan, it's my prayer. Because life will always find ways to test us to burn, to bend, to break. But if you meet it with grace, you don't just survive it, you sanctify it. As I finish writing this, I can hear laughter from the kitchen. Priya is teasing Eleanor about her disastrous attempt at macarons. Someone drops a pan. The radio hums an old country song. It's all so ordinary and yet it feels holy. I close my notebook, turn off the light, and whisper to the empty room. Thank you. Not to anyone specific, just to life. Because even after everything, I still believe in its sweetness. And that, more than anything, is grace. Dallas. 5 years later, the bakery still stands on the same corner of Elm Street, though it looks a little different now. The paint is a deeper shade of cream, the sign a bit weathered by Texas summers. But when the morning light hits the glass, the gold letters Maria's Hearth still shine like they did the day I first opened the doors again. The world outside has changed. So have I? And this morning, as I sit by the window with a cup of chamomile tea and my old leather notebook, I decide to write a letter not to anyone else, but to my future self. Maybe it's silly. Maybe it's just one of those sentimental baker things people expect from me. But I've learned that words have weight, and sometimes you have to send them forward so that when the wind of life tries to knock you off course again, you can find your own compass waiting in the past. So, here it goes. Dear Maria, whoever you'll be, if you're reading this, I hope your hands still smell faintly of flour. I hope you still hum old love songs when you close up the shop, even if no one's around to hear. And I hope that when you look in the mirror, you see more peace than pain. Remember that the woman who writes this letter has already walked through fire and came out not unscathed, but unbroken. You learned that not every ending is destruction. Some are deliverance wearing a darker disguise. You learned that truth. Once spoken, cannot be taken back, and that's both the curse and the cure. You learned that revenge may taste sharp on the tongue, but it's the quiet dignity of truth that lingers longest. And you learned that love, real love, isn't the kind that demands loyalty through blindness. It's the kind that gives you back your sight and says, look, the world is still beautiful without me in it. Do you still bake lemon thyme cake? Do you still pause, mid-slice, to listen to the soft sound of the knife meeting the board, the rhythm that once kept you steady when everything else was falling apart? I hope so, because that rhythm is your heartbeat. It's your proof of life. I hope the bakery is still full of laughter and imperfect pastries, that you still let the kids from the local high school use the kitchen for their fundraiser projects, that you still stay up too late testing recipes, just to see if cinnamon and rosemary can really coexist. Because creativity, you've learned, is not a talent, it's a form of prayer. I wonder if Alex is still in Dallas. By now, he's probably built a life of his own, maybe even opened his own cafe, or started teaching full-time. I hope when you think of him, you remember not just the scared teenager who clung to you during the scandal, but the man who found his voice when you were learning to reclaim yours. If he ever forgets where he came from, remind him gently, strength runs in your family, not through blood, but through choice. Remind him that resilience isn't passed down, it's practiced daily, like baking, like forgiveness. And if one day someone new walks into your life, someone kind, someone steady, don't flinch. You don't owe the past your loneliness. You've proven your worth doesn't depend on being chosen. But that doesn't mean you must always walk alone. Love again. If you can, not because you need to be completed, but because you've finally become whole enough to share. Do you remember that night, Maria, the one where you stayed in the dark bakery, tracing your fingers along the cooling metal of the ovens, wondering if peace was something you'd ever taste again? You thought silence was punishment, but now you know it was permission. Permission to start over without noise, permission to exist without explanation. And if, in your future, you find yourself standing in another kind of silence, don't be afraid of it. You've met it before. You know its face. There's one thing I hope you never forget. The world will always try to name you by your wounds. Divorcee, victim, widow, survivor. But you don't have to wear those words forever. You can name yourself. You can choose softer titles: baker, builder, believer. You can choose verbs over nouns: create, heal, begin. Because the story doesn't end with what they did to you. It continues with what you decided to do next. Sometimes I still dream of the fire, not the one in the oven, but the one from the night. Everything burned: truth, trust, illusion. But in the dream, I'm not running anymore. I'm standing in the middle of it, calm, the heat wrapping around me like sunlight. I reach out, and instead of pain, I feel warmth. Instead of fear, I feel freedom. That's how I know the wound has healed. Because now, when I think of the past, I don't flinch. I bow, not in defeat, but in respect for the woman who refused to be consumed. You've built something rare, Maria, a life not defined by tragedy, but transformed by it. And though time may take pieces of it, people, places, even memories, the essence will remain. Every loaf you bake, every person you listen to, every story you allow to unfold at your table. That's your legacy. Not revenge, not triumph, but restoration. I hope, in your future, you still write letters like this. To yourself, to strangers, to anyone who needs reminding that pain doesn't make you unlovable. That sometimes the only way to heal is to look back with tenderness instead of fury. And when you find a scar you thought had faded, don't hide it. Run your fingers over it. Thank it. It's proof you lived deeply enough to be changed. I'll end this letter with a confession. For a long time, I thought I'd never be able to forgive Jose, or Sophia, or even myself. But I did, not because they earned it, because I did. Forgiveness, I learned, is the final act of self-respect. You do it not to forget, but to free yourself from the need to keep remembering. So, dear future me, when life tests you again, when someone betrays you, when the world feels loud and cruel, I want you to come back to these words. You survived before, you will again. You loved deeply, lost painfully, and rose quietly. You are not defined by the fire. You are defined by what you built after it. Keep your hands steady, keep your heart open, and keep baking, because somewhere out there, someone will taste your bread, close their eyes, and feel safe for the first time in months. And that right there is grace, passed from your hearth to theirs. When I finish writing, the sun has risen higher. The streets outside are filling with life, the clatter of bikes, the laughter of schoolchildren, the quiet rhythm of a city that keeps forgiving itself for being imperfect. I fold the letter and seal it in an envelope. No address, no recipient, just a small note on the front. In my own handwriting, to the woman I'm still becoming. Then I place it inside the drawer where I once kept Sophia's apology. A full circle, sealed by time and mercy. Outside, the morning light falls across the counter, turning the flour dust into something that looks like snow. I smile, whisper a prayer I don't have to say aloud, and get back to work. Because life goes on, and so do I. And what about you? Tell me where you're from and how you feel after watching this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.